Hello and welcome to What the Lux with me, Fred Moore.
And me, Anand Sharma.
Together we lead Matter of Form, a design consultancy specialising in brand, digital experience and content. And this is a podcast that calls time on tired ideas of luxury.
Alongside industry luminaries and thought leaders, we explore what truly defines category-leading products and services.
We're delighted today to welcome Rosie Shephard to the podcast. She is one of the best connected, most energetic and most knowledgeable people in the luxury industry. She runs Shephard Communications, but also founded the Luxury Communications Council, an invitation-only network of luxury experts whose members are thought leaders and key decision makers in the luxury marketplace. We're excited today to get to chat to a true luxurian, a font of knowledge and on the pulse when it comes to the trends and themes that are shaping the luxury industry. Rosie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great to be with you today, and you're on top of so much of the themes and topics that interest us at Matter of Form. But firstly, just to start, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your background and how did you end up as an expert specialist in the luxury sector?
Sure. So I've been in the sector for about 18 years. I was always actually communication agency side for a number of years of that, maybe like 14 years of that. You know, I launched Etihad Airways, many luxury hotels, luxury retailers such as Selfridges and big brands such as Peroni and Esther Azzurro, which was fascinating. Bit of fashion, bit of beauty. I've pretty much done everything. And then actually did the same in New York for a number of years, came back and then took a role as global head of comms and marketing at Roccoforte Hotels, where I was for 5 years, which was an in-house role, my first in-house role. And from there, that sort of very much was my springboard for founding the Luxury Communications Council and indeed Shephard Communications that came a little bit later. It was very much sort of a very, very traditional British brand. And I just wanted to bring it up to date and make it more relevant, and had lots of conversations in the industry. And lots of people were feeling the same about the industry at the time. So it sort of all stemmed from there, really. And the LCC sort of came together about 5 years ago. Shephard Communications about 3 years ago. And it's going well.
And what was the driving factor that led you to start the LCC, Luxury Communications Council? I'm sure it was a hell of a lot of work, still is, and a real investment, not just of your time, but of your soul and your energy. Why did you want to do that?
Well, first of all, I'll just sort of give a bit of an explanation. So we're very much a network of communication and marketing experts. We all came together to form a collective to really drive the industry forward. We host events, we publish industry reports, we provide sort of troubleshooting services and things like that, very much to sort of equip and inspire our members. And our members are very much top of the game. They're CMOs, they're marketing, they're comms directors from all the different vertical sectors. So it's the French champagne houses, it's the Italian fashion houses, it's the Swiss watches, etc., etc. And brands are sort of, you know, it's the big boys. It's the Chanels, the Stella McCartneys, the Burberrys, it's Condé Nast, it's Armani, it's Dorchester Collection, Soho House Group, Farfetch, Estée Lauder, Moët Hennessy, Laurent Perrier, etc., etc. And I think there was a real sense of change afoot, I guess, 5 years ago with so many new technologies, new audiences, new markets, and many brands were sort of clinging to this sense of old luxury, really over-relying on sort of heritage and age-old messaging about craftsmanship. And it struck me and others that sort of marketing comms was very much at the forefront of knowing about innovations, not just in luxury, sort of across the world. And so any change within these sort of luxury brands would need to start from us. And we basically all discussed this, the people who then became founding members, discussed this as a collective and decided to do something about it. And you know, I then took the role as the founder and very much do the legwork, but it very much went from there. And it's basically two real sort of objectives. Firstly, to sort of drive the industry forward as a collective force, but also to allow the sort of marketing comms function to be at the very best level it can be by inspiring and equipping our members.
But what's interesting there is, I think it's implicit, not explicit, is you're kind of saying that the luxury industry had become a bit staid, fusty, old-fashioned, not up for innovation. Do you think there's some truth in that?
Absolutely. And I think it's actually 2023 has been a real step change for that. And, you know, I think that for many reasons, and we can talk about that, you know, whether it's, you know, diversity, inclusion, whether it's, you know, talking about sustainability, whether it's talking about, you know, all these big themes in the technological developments. But yes, like we weren't taking advantage of all these amazing new markets and new tools and new audiences. We we just weren't. And there were some exceptions. Obviously, fashion industry has creative directors who are very much sort of there to basically, I guess, be at the forefront of these things and champion this sort of thing. But otherwise, there were lots of brands just clinging, especially British brands, are very guilty of just clinging to their British heritage for dear life, which, arguably isn't necessarily something to be celebrated at the moment as being British. Anyway, we won't go into that. But so we wanted to form a really sort of international group and actually have that real headspace to share our learnings and discuss these really big things and learn from amazing people. And our first ever speakers will sort of set the bar really high, was the president of Condé Nast and the editor of Vogue. And that sort of set the bar high. And then what we do is we just get the very, very most experts in their fields. Yeah, we very much consider it a learning exercise. Yes, it's social unless people make connections, but people are there to learn and sit there with their paper, pen and papers, and it really does inform their strategies.
And I think it's important what you're doing, because, I question whether luxury is actually an industry, really, because obviously airlines is an industry, banking is an industry, retail is an industry. Luxury is more perhaps about the consumer, the quality, the craft, the product. But anyway, the description of luxury and people involved in that, certainly with the British hat on, it's a really important part of our economy. It's something we can and should do really, really well. It perhaps needs more people like you bringing people together to help. The sum is greater than the parts, I guess.
Yeah, well, we've basically grown really slowly. It wasn't, we were never sort of trying to form this big thing. It was very much about exactly that, making the industry the best it can be and sharing learnings, and so many amazing partnerships have come about as a result of it. So much inspiration and education, and even like job swaps and something like that. So London's been a real success story, and we have now started our international expansion. So Dubai is well underway, which is amazing. New York, we're hoping, is later this year, and we've got real international ambitions beyond, because our customer is a universal customer, a global customer. Our high net worth individuals and ultra high net worth individuals aren't refined to one geolocation. So, we really need to be sort of getting these learnings from across the world. And I think an international LCC collectives, across the globe can enable that, which would be great.
On that, what do you see as the key differences between what you do in Britain, in the Middle East, and what you might do in America? Is it vastly different, or is it pretty much the same with local nuances?
I probably have put in a bit of a red herring there, but because many of our London-based marketing comms directors very much have either European or global remit, or some sort of combination of that. So it's not so much that we sort of segment learnings market by market. I think it's just there are nuances across the globe that we can definitely benefit from. Consumer behaviours in the Middle East are different. They have different priorities. They have different patterns, etc. So there are nuances, but I think it's about us just being on the forefront and learning from each other.
And just for you personally, what have been on this journey? What have been the highlights for you with the LCC?
Do you know what? I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, but COVID was a really great time for us, which is actually against all the odds, because I was in total despair because we had to cancel all our events for the year and everything like that. And we did go online and we did them, and actually they were incredibly well attended, which was amazing, because I think people were really looking for that connection at that point, but also people were really wanting to learn from each other. And it was the first time I'd really seen companies that were, our competitors by definition, really break down those walls and share. And what we did was, for each sort of industry vertical, being crass, but say like watches and jewellery, we lumped together fashion, hospitality, etc. We basically did open agenda calls where there was just nothing, set in terms of, an agenda, but we just said, okay, what do we need to talk about? Obviously, we were getting lots of learnings from China at that point because they were well ahead. The country had been through a lot ahead of Europe, and we took those learnings, and everyone's CEOs wanted to know what the other companies were doing, and it was kind of like this amazing time where, I won't name names, but like all these companies were just sharing and sharing and sharing. And I actually really expected the walls to go back up afterwards. And they have a little bit, but not as much as certainly before. So I think that was a really pivotal moment for the industry to sort of actually just really be driving in the same direction. And it was great to see everyone help each other and, on a day-to-day basis. So that was really great. That was a real highlight for me. I think another highlight has been working with PR Week. We curate their sort of most influential list, which is called the Power Book, for the luxury section, and we started these dinners, which is probably one of my favorite times of the year. The LCC members are probably some of the most sociable and connected people in London, so getting them all together in the evening, which we don't really do as part of the LCC proposition, because it's it's supposed to be part of the working day. It's not a jolly as such, but seeing everyone come together for our dinners that we curated and letting their hair down has been really fun.
I just wonder as well, are you able to draw out the things that keep your members up at night? Are you able to observe any themes, sort of a couple of things that are really on their mind at the moment or perennially?
Well, look, I mean, there's so many changes all the time in consumer demand, new tools, data regulations. Suddenly there's VAT regulation changes, shifts in different geographical markets, sort of in terms of priority markets. It's all about China, then maybe it shouldn't all be about China. Now we've got open source AI. It just goes on. And I think with all these shifts does come great opportunity. And at LCC, we really, as I mentioned earlier, we do share these deep insights and learnings as to how these can be taken advantage of, rather than sort of putting our heads in the sand as per that sort of old luxury way that we've referred to. So I think it is obviously specific, and it's specific to people's roles and everything. But I mean, there are just many things. And I just think, rather than challenges, we should see them as opportunities.
I want to talk about innovation a bit later, but just actually getting back to the true essence of luxury and your thoughts on it. We at Matter of Form, I guess, with our innovation hat on and our brand hat on, we perhaps see ourselves as the outsiders challenging conventional notions of luxury. But I think that's well understood. What does luxury mean to you personally?
Luxury traditionally is about rarity, right? So, that used to be precious materials or handcrafted one-offs or something that's out of reach of others. And that might be by price tag or by rarity or whatever it might be. But the thing now that seems to be valued as much as these is actually this sort of time to switch off, rest, privacy, sleep. And that's sort of, I think it's partly COVID, where health naturally became, a luxury. But I think it's also a bit of a backlash against this sort of productivity wave that, that sort of startup culture, hustle culture, that you had to be busy, 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 go, go, go. New luxury that people seem to be prioritizing at the moment. And certainly what it does mean to me as a busy person, I've got kids and a couple of companies, and time to switch off, rest, privacy, sleep, like that restorative moment seemed to be really important. This came into conversation in many luxury brands last year, and I think it still rings really true. Gucci actually even they were partnered with, I think it was a Finnish health tech brand, to create this sleep tracker ring, this 18 karat gold sleep tracker ring that costs just under $1,000. Selfridges are always a brand who are always at the forefront. So, I always encourage people to look at what they're doing, because they're always thinking, steps ahead. And, they have sleep pop-ups and sleep sessions hosted in their cinema, encouraging power naps and things like that. So it's always sort of consumer-led. And then quickly, companies like Gucci, like Selfridges, even like Rosewood Hotels, Estee Lauder, they're always on the forefront. And, I always cite them as great examples. So, in my view, luxury has changed enormously, and we've talked about the luxury of things, luxury experiences, luxury of time in the past. But I think this, I guess it's just using time differently. This taking a moment is now very much at the forefront of what people want, and therefore what brands are either talking about or indeed facilitating.
I guess also it's interesting because the luxury space is popular at the moment. It's becoming quite crowded. Are there any brands that really stand out to you at the moment who are doing something really special, really remarkable?
I mean, many, to be honest. I think there's been this real step change in 2023, which I mentioned earlier, when diversity and inclusion went really mainstream for luxury brands. And I think that those brands who've sort of been championing that, I mean, over the last few years, there's been some really big leaders in terms of innovation, whether it's Farfetch or Burberry, and all those amazing examples of cool stuff that we've seen people do. But I think this diversity and inclusion piece is a much more meaningful step change than sort of that potentially that sort of just innovation piece. I think Edward Enninful's work with Vogue was really important for representation, and it's prompted a lot of brands to sort of, I guess, play catch up, actually. It's, yes, part of their communication, and that's sort of been filtering through for the last few years, I guess, but also it's like filtered into their workplace policies and their amazing customer journeys and actually even their products, which is really cool. And exactly where a luxury brand should be leading society, not playing catch up. And I think that's finally happened, which is really amazing and really exciting. And one of my favorite examples is that Estee Lauder, I told you I'd be mentioning them again. I just think they're always just seem to be on the front foot, which is really cool. They've launched this app with AI to assist visually impaired customers. And actually, I was chatting to somebody about it. We did an LCC on AI. Our Estee Lauder member mentioned it. One of the team members actually came in and was like, "Oh, well, that's actually really changed my aunt's life." And I was like, "That's amazing. That is a luxury. That's exactly what a luxury brand should be doing, connecting." And they've got arguably the budgets and the time and the sort of technology to actually make a difference. So they're doing it.
Sorry, the privilege of owning quite a lot of the cultural narrative. It's a responsibility that you've got to use for good and not just sit on it and monetize it.
And actually, Selfridges is a really good example of that. So I worked with them. So, I mean, this is really showing my age, but I worked with them on the first ever Project Ocean they did, which was maybe 13 years ago or something. And it was the first conversation ever about the fact that sea life was in jeopardy, and there was huge sustainability issues in that, and they did amazing things and actually partnered with so many amazing industry bodies, as well as doing sort of consumer facing educational piece, and they actually even managed to change the law as a result of this campaign. It's called Project Ocean. That subsequently has been, I guess, expanded to Project Earth, and it continues, I'm sure, into something else. The whole thing back then was using their influence for good, and exactly as you say, using that cultural narrative for purpose. And purpose is a bit of a buzzword, but it's valid. And where these luxury brands do have this amazing influence, it's amazing to see them utilize that.
Zooming out a bit, you talk about purpose and diversity inclusion, but to wider sustainability as a sort of wider term. Do you think that luxury brands are truly now leading on the wider area of sustainability, or there's a little bit of catch up still to go?
I mean, I don't know, because, arguably they're in many ways the source of so much of the problem. So in reality, for fashion, the changing climate threatens so many things: supply chains, consumer preferences, regulatory forces. And if it's not part of their, forefront of their agenda, it absolutely should be. Obviously, all the sort of, the big fish, the Richemonts, the Kerings, the LVMHs have got these amazing, pledges and policies throughout their companies and throughout their different brands that they own. But I don't know, to be honest, it's very difficult to sort of do a broad brush.
Possibly the industry is full of as many good players or bad players as any other sector or grouping, and it's about that, really.
I think the most important thing is that the consumers, Gen Z, obviously is the talk of the town for luxury, luxury brands, and especially fashion. We love talking to the next consumer, or indeed the sort of, obviously Gen Z is very much alive and kicking now, but we're all about sort of the young, and they have, I think it's something like 76% globally of Gen Z have expressed anxiety about climate change, and it would inform their purchases. So that is enough said. So if these consumers care about it enough, they will have to act. Well, it is because of good business sense, frankly. So, we hope that if it's not stemming from a sort of sense of responsibility, that it's at least coming from that. Gen Z is interesting in the sense that there's sort of this anxiety, about climate change that's been part of their narrative for a long time and well documented. But it's actually really nice to see that sort of climate anxiety turn to more optimism. So, there are lots of sort of influencers and things like that, and really, really cool, especially in America, innovators are taking meaningful action. And you see Gen Z's response online to that. Even there's this kid in Louisiana who founded this thing called Glass Half Full, which is, I guess it's basically the state's glass recycling facility, and then it uses the glass to restore the sand of the eroding coastline. And it's like, this had this amazing response and like this really cool thing. And I guess it's like turning what is something that, if it's anxiety, I guess consumer, often the reaction is to turn the back on it and ignore it because it's too hard and too difficult and evokes these really negative connotations. Whereas it is turning to positivity, then it's great. And brands obviously can really engage with that. Brands can use this positivity and actually, use this sort of wave and ride this wave of being part of the solution and encouraging that.
Yeah, do you know that's a real theme of the guests we've had on this podcast is, people who aren't, dare I say it, Daily Mail reading lunatics, who actually have a sense of optimism. They're incredibly positive about the younger generation coming up and their responsibility on this stuff, and hence have a vaguely positive outlook about the future in a way that if you read a lot of mainstream press, it's just doom, doom, doom. That's come up a few times, actually. Rosie, actually, I know for a fact that innovation topics like AI, or dare I say it, the metaverse, or all of those things, they're hot topics at the LCC and at the events. What is your view? What's any standout innovation in the sector?
I mean, we can't not mention and talk about AI because it's obviously the biggest game changer at the moment. The thing is, in reality, luxury brands have been using AI to segment consumers and create bespoke experiences for years. And this isn't, just because it's now open source, doesn't really change that. There is huge opportunity and some of it will be consumer facing. Lots of brands at the moment are doing these fun, creative showcases and demonstrations of this sort of innovative mindset, which we've talked about, which is really cool and really fun to see and, entertaining and all of that. But most of it will be behind the scenes. But it's early days. And I think there are more prevalent topics at the moment, which we're doing a lot on AI at LCC. Of course we are, there are many efficiencies to be had within the marketing communication function, which you and I are going to talk about a little bit more later, I hope, and which is really cool, and there's loads to do. But I think topics like, I guess, where decentralization, for example, much bigger topic that I'm much more excited to explore and see huge potential and I'm really intrigued to know where it goes. And so decentralization, as I'm talking about it, and I'm sure there's many definitions, but obviously, first of all, there were marketplaces and then luxury services that were previously reserved for the elite suddenly are accessible. So Uber, you've got your private chauffeur, you've got your beauty service that comes to your door, giving your glam. So what was normally for celebrities, and then you can hire your amazing dress, your amazing bag, blah, blah, blah. So all these lovely things, which are now much more accessible. And then decentralization is now, it's going to the next step. So it's suddenly democratization of social platforms. And there's this really, really interesting platform called Niche. So previously, of course, on Instagram, if you post it, they then own it. Whatever it is, what it is. But I think that platforms like Niche, I guess they've just got such potential to open the door to new ownership models and I guess change how brands and consumers interact. If you can own or co-own your own digital experience, that's different. And that changes everything. So Niche is a bit like a crypto model. They put the control in people's hands and members are owners, much like the stock market. And then that group, of course, becomes more desirable because it's closed door and more exclusive, and therefore ownership stake would go up as the ownership progresses. So there's huge opportunity for that. So I'm sort of tracking stuff like that much more closely than I am AI at the moment, because I think that's really niche. It's really smart, and I think it's going to pop up everywhere over the next. I hope it's not a sort of just a tactical thing that has a flash in the pan.
Yeah, it's and fascinating because AI, exactly that. A bit like actually, so NFTs, cryptos, that completely distracted from a conversation around a load more interesting and relevant things like how blockchain could be used in digital ownership or digital twins. And AI which has been going on for 100 years, is confusing many more interesting applications of technology that are related directly or indirectly to AI. Fine. But is just innovation in general. We've just done a podcast on digital IDs for products in fashion, and that itself is a mind-bendingly large topic that will transform, everything from after sales to sustainable procurement, etc., etc. And all people want to talk about is AI, obviously.
Well, it's a nice break from NFTs, frankly, which is, I think they have really served a purpose. I'm not, completely dismissing NFTs. And I think, again, I keep saying this, but these sort of all these brands that wanted to be first movers and seen as innovative have used them really nicely, and it's really cool. And they've done some really fun things. And actually, loyalty programs have changed completely as a result of NFTs, which is, in the end, it's all about data and consumer interaction. Whether it's membership tiers and surprise and delight moments, or experiential rewards, taking them to fancy events, or just access to sort of exclusive services, or whatever format it might take. The only marked difference is that this NFT as a tactical tool just has this like very, very cool sort of, I guess it says something about the mindset of the purchaser, or seemingly they want to be part of this consumer group that's got this sort of techie cool mindset, and it's worked really well. There's this restaurant in New York called the Fly Fish Club. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's really interesting. Like, they've basically got NFT based ownership, so it says membership, but essentially the members own seemingly the restaurant. And I don't know actually how much they own of it. We could do some digging, but that's the whole point. And then they lease their NFT, i.e. their membership, out to their mates, who then get temporary membership, who then can go to the restaurant. And it's gimmickly, yeah, totally, but it's really like fun and cool and like highly talkable. And it's just like one of those things that you're like, oh yeah, okay, I can see that working for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's some fundamental stuff underneath it that is more long lasting. So my final question before we go to the outro questions is actually where you see the LCC in 10 years' time, or in the medium to longer term. Where do you see it?
Global domination, of course. I think, going back to our original mission, we want everyone in luxury and comms to be equipped with the best insights, the best tools, and hear from the best speakers. And I think we've done some great work being champions of innovation across the sector. And I think that, that will continue, but we just want to do more. And there are some amazing sort of global communities, especially in the tech world, actually, that are really inspirational to me, and how we can sort of take this further and just making sure that everyone is basically top of their game.
And I've no doubt that will come true. You're extremely determined, and it's pointing that way. Rosie, thanks. We've got the same 4 questions for all of our guests, and I'm going to ask them. The first is, what most irritates you about your industry?
So easy one for me. Slowness to adapt. The GQ editor put it really beautifully, actually. He called it pearl clutching, which is essentially like, a brilliant visual representation of how the industry, the old luxury industry, was slow to adapt and didn't want to move on. And it's time. So that irritates me. But hopefully we're helping solve that problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Second question is, what most concerns you about the world we're leaving the next generation?
Oh, where to start? I've got 2 kids and one on the way, so my concerns slightly change daily. Things present problems and resolve themselves within a few decades. So I think it's futile to fixate on anything in particular at the moment, but I'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Okay, too much there. Third question, penultimate one. If you had to give up your job tomorrow doing what you currently do, what would you do?
Well, I'm certainly an entrepreneur at heart, so I probably would set up something else. I know we haven't really spoken about Shephard Communications, but that's an interesting company in itself, in the sense that our whole premise is about making brands relevant. So it is bringing brands up to date. We did the Platinum Jubilee last year for Buckingham Palace. We work with big drinks brands, big hotel brands, and we do big scale events. If I couldn't do LCC, I'd probably do more of that. But if I'm not allowed to do either of those, then I would do a product. Service industry, as you well know, Fred, is you can only stretch yourself so thin. So it can be very challenging. So maybe a product and try something new and see how that goes.
And last question, this is more about you personally. For the next 5 years, what's the most exciting thing for you?
Global domination of LCC.
Fair enough. Rosie, thank you so much for your time today. It's great to get to talk to you in this context, outside of the group context at LCC, and to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been What the Lux. You can find us on socials at Much Reform, and drop us any questions or comments on Twitter using the hashtag #WhatTheLux. Or if you're a luxury brand looking for strategy and design that goes beyond the banal, get in touch via hello@muchreform.com and chat to one of our consultants.